Oh boy, everybody. For today's topic, we're going to be talking about whether or not YouTubers and streamers really have as much power as they think they do when it comes to the success or failure of a game. And yes, the irony of this video is not lost on me. The idea of getting paid to play video games all day long is a very strange concept. And yes, this is even coming from me who plays video games on a day-to-day basis. But this past decade has been very big in terms of the rise and we could argue legitimacy of being a YouTuber or a streamer. There is big money involved for everybody who gets in on it. We already know, of course, of the big names: PewDiePie, Ninja, Dr. Disrespect, Markiplier, and many more that you probably know, and many more that I have no idea about. And there's been this discussion about what this means for the people making video games. Are streamers and YouTubers the golden ticket to your video game success? And I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to argue that no, that is not the case. And thinking that a well-known YouTuber or streamer is going to make or break a game, I think that's a very dangerous mindset, and that there really isn't as much of a sway or power as much as everybody likes to think. The whole idea behind this influencer culture, which I hate that term with a passion as well, has been trying to push this. And we've seen developers over these past few years comment about what it means to get their game in front of these people, saying things like, oh, this game only succeeded because PewDiePie covered it, or my game failed because not one YouTuber or streamer that I sent a message to covered my game. And this is a very interesting and sometimes a very disturbing topic to talk about, because we're kind of again getting back into what it means to succeed or fail in this game industry, and that's not something a lot of people generally like to discuss. But when I think about the rise of YouTuber and streamer culture, I can't help but draw parallels to the golden age of Steam. We could argue about 2008, 2009 to maybe, I'm curious what you guys think. I would say 2013, 2014, thereabout, in terms of Steam's absolute dominance and impact on video game culture. For that span of time, getting onto Steam was like being featured in Hollywood, Broadway, Bollywood combined as a developer. Steam was still relatively new, it was heavily curated, and if you got yourself there, you essentially got VIP access to a growing, and still growing, you could argue, consumer base of gamers. And for that span of time, let's not mince words here. For a lot of developers, they managed to succeed and thrive getting onto Steam alone, just as there were plenty of developers who failed because they couldn't get on there. And older gamers, or I guess quote-unquote older gamers, will remember those stories of knowing a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew someone at Valve who were able to get them onto there and able to succeed because of it. And as we saw, that went away. Today, being on Steam is pretty much akin to being the 50th pasta brand at your favorite supermarket. It's there, okay? Who really cares beyond that? And we could certainly say the same thing about YouTuber and streamer culture. 5-6 years ago, having somebody else essentially do your marketing for you was considered this amazing thing, and where this whole idea of influencer culture kind of came from. Like we've said, having somebody like PewDiePie make a 3-minute video wackily playing your game was pretty much all the marketing you needed. And we saw this idea of stream-friendly games grow. The idea that the game didn't have to be good. It just had to be interesting or weird or different enough to draw the attention of someone to play it for 5 to 10 minutes. How many YouTube videos are on this channel, or I'm sorry, not on this channel, but on this platform right now, of live reactions to various games, of people screaming and making all manner of weird gestures because of some crazy thing in a game? And that sold a lot of games. In the second part of this video, we're going to talk about kind of the exception to our discussion, but we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But like I was saying, a lot of people felt that, and they still continue to feel, that YouTubers and streamers have this power to get a game and make it this massive success. People will point to Fortnite. They will point to Apex Legends. They'll even go back to older games like PUBG. But the problem with this, and when we get to the dark side of this discussion, is that a lot of people, again, have trouble tracing the line between a game being released and a game getting that massive success. And as we've talked about, there is a huge difference between a great playing game and a marketable game. Sometimes they come together. We've seen that. But for a lot of games out there, you can have an amazing title, a well-designed one, and nobody's going to play it. And this is when things get very serious, and how hard it is to talk about the fact that you failed. Not a lot of people like to discuss being failures. I've said this plenty of times. I fail at social media and PR and marketing. I fully admit that. I wear that as a medal of honor or badge of honor there. But for many developers, especially indie developers, they will do everything they can to dance around the fact that maybe it was their fault that their game didn't succeed. And this takes us to the big question, this chicken or the egg scenario when it comes to video games. Did a game succeed because a big name YouTuber covered it? Or did a big name YouTuber cover it because the game already succeeded? And there is a huge difference between those two. Many people, and again, many people on YouTube and Twitch and publishers and stuff will want to say it's the former. They want to promote these big name people as the arbiters of success or failure. But a lot of times, it's the reverse. That these games are popular and they succeed, and then the person covers it. But how do you get a game to succeed like that? That's the billion-dollar question. If I could answer that right now, I would basically be set for life, because everybody would be coming to me for how to do that. But it's not an easy prospect. And for a lot of developers out there, again, they don't see or they choose to ignore the line between all these various aspects. They'll look at a big name game and think, oh, that game succeeded just because they convinced Markiplier to cover it, or PewDiePie. Or they'll say, oh, this game, they didn't do anything. It was a great game. It got released. Everybody's playing it. And, they're now making all this money. So why are they doing it instead of me? But again, the point is that just because you don't see that work doesn't mean it's not there. Red Hook Games with The Darkest Dungeon, it's an example I keep coming back to, and I'll probably keep doing that in the future, is perfect in this regard. They spent over a year, before they even went to Kickstarter, before that game was even on Steam, doing marketing and PR for it. A lot of people will only look at Darkest Dungeon as that game that Bear Taffy or Northern Lion, or again, pick any other big name YouTuber covered, and therefore was a massive success. Or that it just appeared on Steam, or Switch, or PSN, or whatever, and that's why it succeeded. They don't see or they don't understand that so much work was done behind the scenes to get that game to be a success. And it can be a bitter pill to swallow when your game doesn't succeed. And we've seen this happen with developers who their entire marketing plan is, I'm just going to contact 30 big name YouTubers, they'll do all the marketing for me, I'll become rich and famous. It doesn't work like that. And like I said, even if your game is great, you may do a horrible job of marketing it or selling it to people. News, who is a frequent viewer of our podcast, we did a podcast with him as well. We talked about this both privately and publicly about his game Chromasia. That it is a great tactical or turn-based RPG. Again, we don't know the exact genre name for some of these games. But he talked about some of the troubles he had with getting that game in front of people. And again, you can have a great game, but you may not necessarily have a market-friendly game. And like I said, that is very hard for a lot of people to understand or to process. But if you are somebody who's waiting for that big-name YouTuber to save your game, or your entire plan is just for a streamer or a YouTuber to play it, then you are behind the 8 ball. And that can be hard to hear sometimes. But like I said, there have been games that have been released that may not be the best game, but still sold massive amounts of money. Plenty of indie developers probably get a little nausea in the back of their throat whenever we talk about the game Goat Simulator and how it succeeded despite not being the most polished or technically designed title. But with that said, after this quick word to our Patreon backers, we're going to talk about a game that came out or succeeded during the heyday of streamers and YouTubers, and how, in a manner of speaking, it's become the exception that proves the rule. And now for a quick thank you to our Patreon backers. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, you'll find our Discord channel linked down below. This is footage of Renowned Explorers International Society, one of my favorite games of 2017 and one that we've played on the stream quite a bit. This was also very close to being a complete failure for Abbey Games and quite possibly closing the studio along with it. And that's not hyperbole. I interviewed the lead designer and owner of Abbey Games a few years ago, and he said pretty much that. And he came out and told me that if it wasn't for Total Biscuit at the time doing a WTF piece on the game, that gave the game enough word of mouth and notoriety to turn things around. And today, the company is doing well. They just had their first successful Kickstarter to add more content to their next game, Godhood. But keeping with this discussion here, it again raises some very interesting questions about what it means to reach out to influencers, streamers, YouTubers, however you want to call them, and whether or not they can save your game. Now, here's the thing. I don't know what Abbey Games' marketing plan was for Renowned Explorers. And again, we're never going to know. And that's one of the tough things when we talk about marketing when it comes to video games, is that once you start succeeding, chances are you're going to keep succeeding. We've talked about this before with the power of word of mouth, the positive feedback loop, and that the more people who know about you, the more people who are going to find out, and that keeps growing. And at this point, it's very hard to see just what it means to have these people or have influencers support your game. There's so many out there now trying to cover video games and trying to turn this into a business that, as we said in the first part, you really can't rely on somebody else doing the work for you. Now again, going back to Total Biscuit, or I should say the late Total Biscuit's involvement here, that was a different time. And I know it's weird to say, a year or 2 years ago was a different time. But unfortunately, it really is. And as more companies and people are trying to approach things from a business standpoint, it's becoming harder for you to just reach out to someone to cover your game. Like for myself here, I'm down to 7 videos a week now. And while that may still seem like a lot, when you have 30 games being released day to day, you can't cover everything. And while I am certainly more receptive to unknown games compared to, I think, other people, at some point, if I have to choose between 10 different games, 9 of them aren't going to get covered that day. But this leads into some very harsh truths when it comes to trying to make this or make video games as a business for you. And The big one is that, again, you cannot have a business plan revolving around somebody else doing the work for you. You need somebody on staff or a publisher or anybody to be able to handle PR and marketing. If you don't have that, nobody is going to do it for you for free. And when it comes to marketing a video game, you have to do this as early as possible. And it's time for a very harsh lesson for any developers watching this right now. If you are waiting a week before your game is released, before you start doing any marketing, you have already failed. And I know that sounds very harsh. I know that probably some of you watching this right now have done it. But it is unfortunately a truth here. You have to be thinking about marketing. You have to be thinking about doing these kinds of promotions almost the millisecond you have footage or concept art or anything that you think people would want to know about or are interested in. With the case of Renowned Explorers here, like I said a few minutes ago, when it comes to marketing, this is a tough game, I think, to market. It is a, again, roguelike tactical strategy or tactical RPG kind of game. And this can be very tough for developers, especially when we look at independent games and just the sheer unique factor that goes along with them. Like, another game that people will probably point to as having a massive success would be something like Undertale. But again, you need to remember that Toby Fox, the creator of it, already had a big fan base and recognition going into the Kickstarter. Like, he didn't just appear one day saying, lo and behold, here's Undertale, give me money. You have to be able to cultivate a fan base. You need to be able to have people who not only know about you, but want to support you. Now, in the last part, I brought up this point about the whole chicken or the egg scenario when it comes to games succeeding, especially when it comes to YouTubers. Did the YouTuber lead to the game succeeding? Or did the game succeeding lead to the YouTubers? And like I said, this is a tough thing to go for, to look at. When we look at big name YouTubers and people who cover games for a living, you can send them emails until, morning, noon, and night. That doesn't mean they're going to cover your game. Some might if you do a sponsor with them or if you're already a big enough name. But trying to rely on this is pretty much like trying to shoot a gun off in the dark. You also run into that issue, what if the streamer or YouTuber hates your game? And you just pay them or you just beg them to make a 10-minute rant video about how much your game sucks. Again, you can't just look at top 10 gaming YouTubers and base your entire marketing plan around them. And this also leads into a greater talk about, as we've said, with stream-friendly games. And I'm not sure if that topic is, on point enough to talk about in this one or if we want to make another video on. But again, we've seen many game developers try to make those games as stream-friendly as possible. Whether it's having Twitch integration, being more about the audience watching, and you can certainly spot these games sometimes from a mile away. And again, while this may sound like a sound business plan, just let PewDiePie or just let Markiplier play your game, you cannot count for that. Because what happens if they don't? And pretty much like 9 times out of 10, they probably won't cover every game that gets sent to them. What do you do then? And that then part is a topic that we'll probably have to come back to in another video. But to wrap things up for now, the days in which a YouTuber or a streamer can be the saving grace for your game are long past us, just as it was with Steam being the golden standard of game success. A lot is being put on developers these days, and that bar, as we keep talking about, is going higher and higher. You can't just create a game in 6 to 8 weeks, do no marketing for it, and expect it to be a 5 million copy bestseller. You have to put as much work into your game as you do into getting the word out about it. And like I said, and I keep stressing this point, if you can't or don't want to do it, then you need to find somebody who can. And there will probably be developers or people leaving comments down below trying to argue with me about the games that have succeeded without doing marketing or without having a publisher. But again, unless you worked at that studio, you will have no idea how much time and energy they spent into promoting that game, either through themselves or through a third party. And you cannot just say, my game is good enough, it will sell on its own. That does not work anymore. But after all that lovely optimistic discussions here, let's wrap things up for today. So thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we the art and science of games. Until our next video, have a great night. If you're looking for a book on design, my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, is out now. It is available where most books are sold, and it comes in paper, hardcover, or digital copies. This is the perfect book for anyone interested in learning about game design, whether you are a student, enthusiast, or just a fan. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.